We welcome people who have just joined us, and this is going to be a shorter session than this first one. We welcome Sri Narayan Maneji, who is the secretary and the head of the BNMIT institutions. In fact, he's won an award from the Hindu for the best educationist. And what is nice about that college is that it's an engineering college, but they have a very active nature club. And like I already mentioned right at the start, they've always supported us in anything that we've done with the environment. So each year we have, actually we started with a crazy, massive live wildlife photographers exhibition with I think 14 of India's biggest wildlife photographers exhibiting. And I mean, we just said, okay, we'll do it. And then it became so big. We were working like maniacs. But, with the support of BNMIT, it's been a really beautiful journey with Srishti Sambrama, and their students are they're very encouraging. And, it's very nice to see that they're trying to inculcate this whole idea of the environment being important. It doesn't mean that you have to do environmental science to understand the environment. So I will allow Sri Narayan Mane to speak a few words. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Vijayalakshmi, for a nice introduction. Happy evening to all the participants here and the panelists. I am very delighted to be here amongst an elite audience who are like-minded in the cause of conservation and saving the environment. It is a subject very dear to all of us at BNM Group of Educational Institutions. And I am happy that in spite of this pandemic, we were able to put up this good show. This has been going on for the last 10 years with the active support of Heritage headed by Vijayalakshmi Vijaykumar. And I'm sure this will go on, bringing together the stalwarts in this field, especially those who are really working beyond the call of duty, and also making the minds of people richer with insights into the environment, with insights into our responsibilities, and also making us know about the status of the environment today, what needs to be done, what we can do at the grassroots level, what students can do in their own way, plus bring awareness among the people who are responsible for this, like the Department of Forest, like the government, both at the state and at the center. And I'm really very happy to be part of this Srishti Sambrama, the Earth Mother Festival, which has been happening from the last 11 years. And I'm also very happy to share that at BNM Educational Institutions, we have a nature club called as the BNM Friends of Nature Club, which has been in existence from 94-95, and this year we are celebrating the 25th Silver Jubilee year. I am very happy that lots of people from across countries and continents are participating in this beautiful program, which is happening online, and our activities at BNM Friends of Nature Club has been varied. So we take students starting from the 5th standard up to post-graduation and conduct classes for awareness classes for them at every stage and every level separately to inculcate in them the awareness of the environment, how man cannot survive without the environment, what is important about it for our living, for the present and for the future. And some of the activities that we are doing in the Nature Club is basically teaching them the elements of bird watching, enjoying, identifying all the ways that is possible to identify the birds. Tree planting, not just planting, but also taking care of them, nurturing. For your information, all the trees in Banshankari second stage extension of Bangalore have been planted by our institution students and staff right from 1974. So if you see any trees which is beyond 35, 40, 45 years, it has been planted in this area. It has been planted by B&M Group. So apart from this, our children are also encouraged to go do the seed ball making. Plus, they are taken to the wilderness field trips, bird watching trips, and also they are shown beautiful documentaries. I think many of the people who have made documentaries here, all the documentaries we have received from them, and it is in our archives, and it is shown to the students, and some special person would come and interact with the students and give them a deeper understanding of what they have just seen in the documentaries. So many things our students have been doing, and this has been happening much before environment became a common word among the socials in the society and also among the public. So it is deep-rooted effect at B&M, and we are very happy that we have been able to continue this kind of exercise and bring a lot of inputs into the students. Most importantly, our children are also into various activities. Apart from doing very well in their academics, they are also involving themselves with NGOs, looking after the programs in the rural areas, bringing awareness among them, among the villagers, and showing them the importance of not spraying insecticides, pesticides, and killing the very food that the birds eat. Probably we are going back to the old ways of agriculture, and this is being inculcated by our students among the rural folks as to the importance of all these excessive use of fertilizers and many things that they are doing, and it has paid a rich dividend, and almost about 110 to 115 villages they have covered in the last 7-8 years. So this is one aspect of the activities of the B&M Friends of Nature Club. As far as Srishti Sambrama goes, I am sure Vijayalakshmi ma'am would have appraised, but I would like to just share a few points here. Here, not only we celebrate Earth Mother Festival, but also we recognize people who are on the field, the environmental soldiers who have worked beyond the call of duty, and also who have worked without any rewards or any awards, but we have called them to the program, to the festival, and enlightened the audience and the public and the society about their achievements, their hard work, and given them recognition and also given them awards. So this has also been a part of the Srishti Sambrama program that has been happening. So all the while we were talking or hearing to the resource people here in the program the last 4 days, they have been featuring less important in public eyes, but more important in the environment sense, which play their role in the ecosystem. But however, many people ask us why we want to only save the tiger, why not other animals? They are also equally important and part of the environment. But I would like to say here why we have to save first and foremost the tiger, because that is the emblem of B&M Friends of Nature Club, and we call it as the tiger is a gentleman. Why we call it so? Because it is at the top of the pyramid and the food chain. And if the tiger survives, we all know that the pulse of the forest is healthy. And that being so, the forest remains healthy, and the forest remains healthy, we get to have our daily drinking water. Our rivers are healthy. There's no soil erosion, no uprooting of trees, no uprooting of the ground cover, and hence we get water throughout the year. And that is the main reason why we have been stressing about the Tiger. And probably many people may agree with me, many people may not agree, but still the fact remains that if the top of the pyramid breaks or collapses, the entire pyramid will break. So that being so, this is what we believe at B&M Friends of Nature Club. And most importantly, we had in the Srishti Sambrama great people who are connected with the environment and wildlife, people like T.N.A. Perumal, M.N. Jaikumar, and here I would like to remember Mr. Vijay Kavle, who left us very recently. He has been a part of Srishti Sambrama all these 10 years, a very active member, and he has, every time we got a new batch of students, he was there to address them the importance of conserving nature, importance of the birds, and also showed us his beautiful collection of bird photography. So we also have had people like Sandesh Kadur speaking to our students and showing his documentaries. We had Mr. Neginhal, Shatavdani Ganesh, and also we had Mr. Kalyan Verma's program here. And also one of the first programs of Srishti Sambrama, we had Mr. Kamal Baba of Atri, and Bittu Saigal of Sanctuary Magazine also was a visitor to the campus, and he has done for the Kids of Tigers program. Regularly, he has done joint programs with our school children, and it has been a beautiful journey for us. And we are extremely delighted to be part of this August gathering that we have had these last 4 days. And I should say it is all due to the unstinted and relentless work carried out by Madam Vijayalakshmi Vijay Kumar and her team. We have definitely been associated with them, but the basic idea, the ankur of this program, the seed has been laid by her, and we all join hands with her to continue this beautiful work that she is doing. And also we are at BNMIT, our faculties are also totally dedicated, passionate, and also they are soldiers of the environment. And coming to today's program, Kinship Among Wildlife Filmmakers, we have had some documentaries with us from the BBC, where probably many of these photographs would know about the heli gimbal, the beautiful eye in the sky, which I think the other cameras that the 360 camera, which we just understood, these are the things that our students, young minds would be interested to know more. I wish we can call upon Mr. Gautam Pandey to come and speak to our students at BNM. I wish that Vijayalakshmi can help us to get him here and interact with our students. Probably one or two people may be inspired or motivated to take up this art. I'm sure these programs will go a long way in bringing awareness among the students community who are the citizens of the future, and also bring in them a sense of responsibility of conserving for the next generation, and at least see that they are able to be the soldiers that we are looking for, and imprint on the minds of the society their responsibility and the necessity to be a good conservationist, plus take care of the environment for the next generation. And that is the least we can do for the next generation and for the generations to come. I thank all of you for this wonderful opportunity that BNM has had with Heritage to bring about this wonderful program. And I congratulate all the panelists and the participants for a wonderful program that they have been able to put together to enlighten the society at large, and also the government officers whom we tried to bring in, but nobody had the time to come, I am sure. Vijayalakshmi agrees with me that we tried our best to bring in a couple of people who are at the helm of affairs to participate and know what is happening and what they can do with the authority that they have with their chair in which they sit. But unfortunately, that didn't come through. But anyway, this needs a lot of publicity, and I'm sure the publicity that will come through with this program would play a large role in achieving the goals and the targets that we have set for ourselves. I thank you once again for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. And yes, indeed, it's a time that we should remember Vijay Kavle, who was a wonderful bird photographer, and he has been very, very, very supportive, and he's been with us in every Srishti Sambrama that we have celebrated for the past 10 years. And what was wonderful about him was you would hardly see him, and he would always be shy to come on stage when we called him. And he was very willing to share all the work that he had, and he was really a wonderful person. And
I would like to add, yeah, ma'am, I would like to add that in the first exhibition where he put up all his photographs of all the birds and animals, he did not take it back. He donated all those beautifully framed photographs for our nature club. It is all exhibited in the college auditorium, and it is, I think, one of its kind. Maybe each of them will cost in 10, 15, 20, 30,000. He has donated more than 30 of those frames for us.
Thank you, sir.
Remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we are going to be inaugurating our third exhibition. We already have online at Kunstmatrix. We have an exhibition called Strokes of the Wild, and then yesterday we had one called Shutterbugs and the Wild. And today we are going to do one that is wild in the Indian ethos, which I spoke about right at the start. And all these exhibitions will be on for at least a week or 10 days. So we'd be really happy if all of you shared the links and, more people came and saw the fantastic work that these photographers and artists have done. So Varsha, can you walk us through it, please?
Yes, Auntie. So namaste all. Very, very glad that we get to launch our third exhibition on the wildlife in Indian ethos. Like Vijayalakshmi Auntie had said before, there is divinity in all of our animals, and we're very glad that we decided to portray that this evening. Our other two exhibitions around wildlife art and wildlife photographs, we have used Kunstmatrix as the platform for our exhibitions. The link is on our website. Please do make sure to go check it out and to also spread the word about it. So right now, let me walk you through the exhibition. Just give me a second to share my screen.
While she's sharing her screen, I must say that hats off to my team. They have worked night and day to bring this together. And we also thank Vanilla Design, who we have just, harassed for putting some of the things together for us. And of course, Aparna has been the one who has written a lot of the material, and some of it is also by Varsha.
Okay, so we will enter the exhibition. You can also have a guided tour, but right now I'll guide you through the exhibition. So first off, we have a short write-up about the exhibition. I hope everybody can, you can zoom in to the write-up so you can clearly see what we are looking at. Next up, we have the list of photographers and painters and sculptors who have been very kind enough to share their images with us. So thank you to all of them. So the first image we have is the Hamsa or the Swan. The Hamsa or the Swan is the Vahana of Lord Brahma and Saraswati. So please do give it a read. There are a lot of interesting facts about the Hamsa. Secondly, we have the elephant. Of course, when we talk about the elephant, we always talk about Lord Ganesha. So please do give it a read again. This also a very interesting fact. This painting was done by Ms. Sangeeta Kadur, who comes from a family of wildlife conservators, filmmakers. We then have the Mayura, or the peacock, who is the Vahana of Lord Kartikeya. We then have the Nandi, or the bull, who is the Vahana of Lord Shiva. There are about, I think, 12 of these big bulls across India, one being in Bangalore. And then we have the bear. Of course, we all remember Jambavan when we talk about the bear in the Ramayana. He's the one who reminded Hanuman that he can fly. And so that is the bear. Then we have the praying mantis. Next, we have the vulture. When we talk about the vulture, again, we go back to Ramayana. We have Jatayu and Sampati, who were the ones who fought, Jatayu especially, he fought with Ravana to save Sita Mata. This photograph was also given to us by the retired IFS officer, Mr. M.N. Jaikumar. We then have the horse. The horse is the Vahana of Lord Surya. We then go to the spider. This photograph was provided to us by a macro photographer, Mr. Hayat Mohammed, who was also a part of our panel discussion yesterday on shutterbugs in the wild. We then have Varahaswami, or the boar. Varahaswami was the third avatar of Lord Mahavishnu. We then have Kurma. Kurma Avatara was the second avatar of Lord Mahavishnu. This photograph again was provided to us by Mr. M.N. Jaikumar. Please do give it a read. There are like really interesting facts about each animal and how it is involved, how it played a role in the Indian ethos. We then have the rhino, which interestingly, this is the first time when I got to know that rhino was an important part of our ethos. We then have this beautiful painting by Mr. G.S. Sudhindra of the Mushaka, or the mouse, who is Ganesha's Vahana. We then have the rooster, the one that wakes us all up in the morning. The rooster is also an important animal because it represents Lord Kartikeya's flag. We then have the crocodile, who is the Vahana of Lord Varuna, the god of oceans and water and other water reservoirs. The ant, when we talk about the ant, we always remember Valmiki, because Lord Valmiki came out of the Valmika, which is an ant hill. We have the owl, the wise old owl. This is a painting done by Miss Srimati Krishna De, who is the mother of Mr. Biswajit De, who is also part of our panel on the first day on Lifeline Nurture. The owl is again the Vahana of goddess Lakshmi. The parrot, or Shuka, is held by Lord Meenakshi. And this again is a painting done by Mr. G.S. Sudhindra. We then have the Sarpa, or the snake. The Sarpa is related to Lord Kartikeya, to Lord Shiva, and he's also Lord Adishesha. He's again Lord Mahavishnu's bed, Adishesha. We then come to Anil, or the squirrel, who has played a vital role in the Ramayana by being Sita Mata's friend and also has helped Sri Rama in building the Ramasetu. We then come to Lord Hanuman, who's the Vanara here. So Hanuman is represented by, is actually the grey langur, which is what is represented here. This photograph was provided to us by Kalyan Verma. We then have the tiger, the Vahana of goddess Durga. I'm sorry, I'm rushing through because we do have a speaker for the next session. We come to the blood pheasant, or the Chakora in Sanskrit, who is Sikkim's protector. He's widely worshipped in Sikkim. We come to Lord Garuda, who is the Vahana of Mahavishnu. And finally, we come to the Krishna Mruga, or the antelope. Here it's represented by as a black buck. He is the Vahana of Lord Vayu. And with that, we come to the end of the exhibition. We have tried to incorporate at least 25 animals here. We do have a few more coming up by the end of this week. We also are representing sacred groves as well. So please do make sure to come check it out. Again, by Wednesday, we will be updating this exhibition soon. So with that, we come to the end of the exhibition.
And I would like to mention that Ishwar Mane has also given us many of the pictures, and he happens to be the son of Sri Narayan Rao Mane. And he is practically one of India's most well-known photographers of the butterfly.
So now
I request Sri Harikiran to say a few words before we go on to our next speaker, Sajan John.
Namaskar. Thank you so much, Aka. It was a fascinating 4 days. When I didn't realize the kind of work that you were doing through Heritage. After only I heard from the earlier speaker, the last 10 years this program has been going, and you've been very kind enough to give this platform to CSP and make the CSP as and promote this on a global basis. So that's very nice and generous of you. So as I keep saying, where were you all my life? And I so wish that there's so much to do, and I'm very happy about that. Just a few comments I wanted to talk. I really like the way you've curated, and this whole program has been curated in terms of the 3 days of films. Today we had films, yesterday in terms of the photographs, and earlier in paintings, visual arts, and then the ancient sciences, and we also have throughout how do we conserve. It's a fantastic curation. I just want to tell the audience a bit of about Indic Academy and what it is doing for sustainability. We had the opportunity to host India's first conference on indigenous environmentalism. This conference was held 4 months ago. And this conference we had spread over 2 days. We had more than 45 speakers, and we covered a wide range of issues. And this is for the first time this has happened as such a kind of a conference which dealt with issues from an academic point of view. After that, we have set up a center for indigenous sustainability. This center is headed by Rahul Goswami and Biva Kermani. And through this center, we have announced and awarded 8 research fellowships across various topics. And that research is going on. Broadly speaking, this center is focused on 3 areas: regenerative agriculture, Ayurveda, and crafts. So we are looking at doing ground level research and working from there onwards. Our primary focus is always we look at the value chain. Primarily, we look at the research. Research has to convert itself into publications. The publications then have to be converted into courses. And from that courses, we do events and webinars and seminars. And so that's the value chain that we look at. So this center for indigenous sustainability is now very active, and we look forward to any of you to engage with us because this is Indic Academy itself is focused on Indic civilizational thought, and as Vijayalakshmi keeps talking about how our culture it is originally about seeing divinity in nature, and we all know about that. So how do we bring that back into the forefront? And that's what this center is trying to do. And one of the things that struck me, and we had announced this a year and a half ago, and I want to request, because the way it, for example, just now, Varsha has showed us about the various animals that are there in our scriptures. We have grown a forest here in Hyderabad, a 14-acre forest under the Miyawaki scheme, Miyawaki way of growing a forest. And we have created pockets of spaces in between, and we want to actually create a environmental art sculpture park and encourage artists. So if you actually seen what Vijayalakshmi has done, she has created painters on the first day, then you have the photographers, and then the documentary filmmakers. So you see, you have three forms there. So the fourth form is basically conceptual art, installation art, sculptural art, which also represents how we as an indigenous culture see divinity in the nature. So this is a project that we have announced it a year and a half back, and it's there out there, and because of COVID, then we could not take it up. But I would urge all of you who are I see a lot of artists who have participated in this event. I would urge all of you to think about this, that whatever you're doing, how do we physically manifest it and represent this, and again showcase how indigenous culture and indigenous thinking is the way forward for sustainability. So with those few words, I thank Vijayalakshmi for a fantastic event. This half year Center for Soft Power has gone from strength to strength. We've just finished a global Utsava on soft power. Before that, we had more than 8 talks. Our Soft Power mag, which Aparna is editing, is doing fantastic. It's the only one of its kind in the world today, which showcases our culture to global audiences. So we look forward to continuing this engagement. Thank you very much.
Varsha, can you please, we welcome Sri Sajjan John to the session. Varsha, yeah. Can you please introduce him?
Yeah. A few words about Mr. Sajjan John. He's our panelist for the day. Mr. Sajjan John has a master's degree in marine biology, and he has joined Wildlife Trust of India in 2014. He manages the marine projects of WTI, which includes the Whale Shark Conservation Project along Gujarat, Kerala and Lakshadweep, the Coral Reef Recovery Project at Mithapur, Gujarat, Mangrove Conservation Project in North Kerala, and Mobile Distribution Survey along the Indian coast. We look forward to listening to your talk, Mr. Sajjan John. Over to you.
Thank you, Varsha. Hope I'm audible.
Sir, we can't hear you well.
You're quite faint, Mrs. John. Can you?
Okay, so is it audible now?
Yeah, it is.
It is fine. Okay, thank you, Varsha. Thank you, Vijayalakshmi ma'am, for giving an opportunity to talk about the conservation success of whale shark on this platform. And I would like to say that the previous session, I was listening to the previous session, and it was quite amazing to hear that how this group of conservationist documentary group working very closely to share the conservation message across. And this particular project, the Whale Shark Conservation Project, which I'm going to talk about, is also a product of a documentary which created a huge hue and cry in the conservation world. So with that, I would like to talk about the success story of the whale shark conservation, which happened in Gujarat. So just to start with, what exactly the whale shark is. Whale shark is the largest living fish on planet Earth. It can grow up to 18 meters and it can weigh a little over 20 tons. We don't have much information about this particular species, even though this is one of the largest fish. Our information about this particular species is very, very less. What makes it so endangered is that there is unregulated fishing, lots of poaching happening for its fins, liver, and skin and meat. And there are lots of accidental entanglement, mortality, and also ship strikes. So these are the reason why, these are the major reasons of the mortality of these sharks. And looking into the okay, so when we talk about whale shark, there is a confusion between people. So lay public really don't know what exactly a whale and what exactly a whale shark. And most of the time, when I talk about whale shark, end of the talk, most of the people ask me, okay, so now you talk, I mean, now you start telling about whales. I don't talk about whales here. Whales are mammals, just like human beings, whales are mammals. Here I'm going to talk about shark. Shark is a fish, okay? And whale shark is a fish. Whale shark is not a mammal. So it is nowhere associated to a whale. Because of its sheer size, it's a huge shark. So because of its sheer size, we call it as commonly as whale shark. So whale shark is a shark and it is a fish. That's why we call it as the largest fish in the planet. Whale shark is having a fairly large distribution. It is distributed all along the coast, mainly in tropics. It is not seen in the temperate region, but it prefer the warm climate. So it is fairly common along the tropics. If coming to India, Gujarat coast, especially the Saurashtra coast, is one of the major aggregation sites of whale sharks. So every year from October to April, you will get to see whale sharks aggregating in larger number along the Gujarat coast. So this was one of the major issue also, because when the whale sharks used to aggregate along the Gujarat coast, what exactly happened is that people found it as an opportunity for livelihood. So people started to hunt for whale shark. They were targeted hunting for whale shark along the Gujarat coast till 2001. So what happened is that, such a large animal, we are talking about a huge animal over 20 tons. This biomass is exactly used for, and there is no much of commercial value for edible value for whale shark meat. So what they do is that they'll take the meat and they'll make poultry feed out of that thing. So, and fin is also having some value, so largely export value, and it don't have any kind of domestic market. And liver, basically they'll take the liver, extract the liver oil to waterproof their boats. So you can imagine that such a graceful animal, gentle giant, it's no way create a harm any of the human beings, is slaughtered mercilessly for thrifty amount of profit. So I would like to link it to the previous session. The speakers talk about the importance of conveying the conservation messages across. So I would like to talk about this particular documentary by Mr. Mike Pandey. In 2000, he made a documentary on the whale shark, the plight of the whale shark along the Gujarat coast. It was titled as Shores of Silence, and this particular documentary received the Green Oscar for one of the best documentary movies in that particular year. And this documentary clearly showcased the plight of these.
Laptop won't come with that. You stand like that only, yeah. It's a framing photo. You guide from there with the looking at the camera. You guide him.
3, 2, 1.
Sorry, I can hear some.
Stand straight.
Srinivas, can you please mute?
You are going too much on the side. Come between. Stand straight. Stand straight.
Sri Narayan Mane, can you please? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So this particular documentary showcased the real sad story of whale shark along the Gujarat coast, and how the coastal communities are, how the livelihood of the coastal communities were dependent on the whale shark in that particular region. So this was an eye-opener for everyone, and this documentary really made a dent. And this documentary actually kickstarted a massive conservation project along the coast of Gujarat, which I am also part of, and I'll be talking about that particular project. So what happened is that this documentary made everybody to kind of discuss about the sad state of whale shark in the country of India. And this actually also led to many of the policy changes as well. So whale shark became the first fish to get the protected status in the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. So whale shark in 2001 became the Schedule 1 in the Schedule 1 of Indian Wildlife Protection Act. So this is the first fish to get that particular status. But the sad part, what happened is that even though the protection was there on paper, in the real life scenario, the whale shark was again facing numerous threats from the fishing communities. So we thought that, yes, we need to convey this message across the fishing communities. Okay, the fish is now protected, the fish is endangered, we have to save it. But the thing is that somebody has to go and tell this thing to the fishing community. So we thought that, okay, this is a better time to kind of step into the fishing community. And we also got some support from International Fund for Animal Welfare. The corporate support we got from Tata Chemicals Limited, and we thought that, okay, fine, we will go to the public. And we started this project in 2004 along the Gujarat coast. The first major challenge was that apart from the fishing community or apart from the fishers, nobody have seen a whale shark. So we are telling them that, okay, whale shark is the largest fish. It is, it is almost like 20 ton, 20 meters, all these things. But the thing is that, nobody have seen a whale shark in real life, the general public. So we thought that, okay, for the people to kind of, get a context, we have to make something like that. So we made an inflatable balloon, basically. So this is an inflatable, life-size inflatable, which is close to 40 feet. And we took this inflatable to the general public, and we told them that, see, this is the animal we are talking about here. Okay, this is such a large animal. Even though it's such a large animal, it is not creating any harm to any of the human beings. This is basically friend of the fishers, and basically these animals are really important for the health of the oceans. And whenever these animals are coming to your shore, you are killing them. So it's not a good thing. Okay, so first of all, we made this inflatable, and we also thought that, okay, this is not enough. We thought that, okay, we have to get little deeper. So we took the support of spiritual leader Sri Morari Bapu. And Morari Bapuji told that through his kathas, he told that, see, whale shark is the avatar of Lord Vishnu, the Matsya avatar of Lord Vishnu. And also, if you see that the whale shark are coming to the Gujarat coast to give the child during its pregnancy and during its childbirth. So he started to kind of relate in such a way that, okay, this is the way like the married girl coming back to the her house to deliver the baby. So you have to treat this fish as a guest. So Aditi Devo Bhava. So this is deeply ingrained in our culture. So you cannot kill a guest who is coming to our place, and you have to treat it as your own daughter. So this actually gave a different feeling among the fishing communities. So they really listened to Morari Bapuji. And also we thought that not only the fishing communities or the general public, we have to target the next generation also. So we went to schools and we went to all the coastal communities, the kids, and we told that, okay, these fish are important for the ocean. So as I told you, in 2004, we started this particular project, and 2005, the first whale shark rescue happened in the state of Gujarat. The very same fishers, the very same hunters, the very same people used to hunt whale shark are now rescuing the whale shark, rescuing and releasing the whale shark. So far in a span of 15 years, close to 15, 16 years, the fishers of whale shark have rescued and released almost like 789 whale sharks. So close to 800 whale sharks they have rescued and released. And there are many debates that, okay, all the 789 were individuals, or it can be double count or something like that. But I would like to say that 789 instances where the fishers have voluntarily cut their net and released the whale shark. This is a great achievement, because you have to consider that the livelihood of these fishers are dependent on these kind of resources, and they are sacrificing these resources and also their gear, the net, to kind of save one animal. So the contribution is really, really immense. So that's the thing which I told in the earlier, in the starting of my talk, that this project is a testimony that the community participation is an integral element for the success of any conservation project in the country. It's a complex equation, and you cannot take the community out of this equation. If you want a conservation success, the community has to be part of the equation, then only that conservation success will be achieved. And the thing is that we are not only doing the conservation sharing, conservation message sharing, we also do a little bit of science. So we have satellite tagged almost 8 whale sharks from Gujarat coast. And it is evident that the whale shark from the Gujarat coast actually migrate to a larger distance. And here, this is a glimpse of one of the satellite tag, which was tagged from Gujarat. If you can see the northern part of India, the Gujarat part. From there, it's coming down to south and slowly moving to further west towards the Somalian coast. And we tagged this animal for almost like 400 days, and we lost the signal. But the thing is, it's pretty evident that they use the seascape. No, the horizontal use of the seascape is very, very, very large. And the thing is that these animals are not just restricted to our country. We also have to have these bilateral agreements and bilateral dialogues between the countries, our adjoining countries as well. So these are the informations which we are getting from this kind of satellite tagging studies. And interestingly, the thing is that as Morari Bapu told initially, that the whale sharks are coming to our shore to give the childbirth. And I would like to say that his prophecy was almost true. We have recorded something like 8 whale shark pups from the Gujarat waters in a span of last 10 years, out of which 5 were neonates. Neonates means recently born babies, which is less than 50 centimeters in length. You have to imagine, okay, an animal, I'm talking about an animal which is 40 feet. The adult size is 40 feet, but the baby, the neonate, the recently born baby is only 50 centimeters. So it's so small, okay. And we have got the records of 5 neonates and another 3 pre-juveniles. So altogether we have records of 8 whale shark pups from Gujarat waters, which is a really interesting piece of information. And globally, nobody knows exactly where the whale shark mate and where exactly the whale shark give birth. So we don't have much information about the breeding behavior of the whale shark. But here we can proudly say that we have this information from our country. So if you look into this thing, for last 15, 16 years, because of the effort of this conservation project, Gujarat is one of the safest place for whale sharks in this country, right? So there is no there is no targeted hunting of whale sharks recorded from this Gujarat coast in last 15 years. And whenever there is an accidental entanglement of whale sharks happening, the fishers voluntarily cut their net and release it. I actually I missed about this thing. The Gujarat Forest Department is also giving compensation for the net loss. So basically these all things got into the policy level so that the government is also supporting the fishers for their generous contribution. And till date, close to 800 whale sharks have been rescued. So this is the story of the Gujarat. Taking the Gujarat story, we thought that, okay, we can do a survey all along the Indian coast to know that apart from Gujarat, do we have any whale shark aggregations? So the better people to go and ask is the fishers themselves. So we did a pan-India survey interacting with the fishers to know that whether you have seen whale sharks aggregating in your coast during fishing. So they told that, okay, these are the places we have seen whale shark aggregating. So based on the traditional ecological knowledge, or we call it as in other way, the indigenous traditional knowledge, ITK, we have mapped the whale shark, the potential whale shark aggregation sites along the Indian coast. So we have 4 whale shark aggregation along the west coast, that is in the Arabian Sea. And we have potentially 2 whale shark aggregations towards the east coast, that is in Bay of Bengal, right? So that led us to kind of start one more project in the southern part of India, which is in Kerala coast. We thought that fine, because Lakshadweep, Kerala is one of the largest aggregation of whale shark in the southern region. So we will start a project. So in 2017, following the Gujarat model, we initiated a project along the Kerala and Lakshadweep coast. And what happened is that the fishers actually rescued two whale shark which was accidentally entangled from the Kerala coast. So this was also a great achievement, right? The number 2 is really small, but the thing is that these are baby steps towards larger conservation goal. So I would like to kind of conclude my talk over here. I would like all the participants to have a look at this the slide which I am showing. As the previous session also, the speakers talked about the sharing the conservation message. So this is something like an important thing. The ignorance is one of the major problem amongst us. So creating awareness, and I am happy to be part of this platform, and I'm happy that these organizers are also taking attempt to kind of share the information, even though I told that whale shark is one of the largest fish, but it's one of the least known species. So thank you all. Thank you organizers for giving me an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sajjanji. That was a very interesting talk. Just a couple of questions for you. See, in a even a cursory glance at media today, we find a lot of stories on conservation and wildlife. Actually, it's increased during COVID, and a lot of the studies quoted are from Western studies. Even as recent, I think, as mid-September, there was a study which said that the female whale shark is the largest fish, a study from Australia. So why is it that we don't see more of, these are very interesting facts about, they've studied whale sharks over a period of 12 years and found gender differences in growth. And why is it that we don't see a lot of, news like this coming originating from India? Is there a particular reason? Are we doing less research? Is there more funding in the West? Is there more interest in the West in such kind of studies?
Yeah, so you're referring to one of the study which very recently came to domain that the female whale sharks will outgrow the males. Okay, so the thing is that exactly to a question, here, as I told you, whale shark are listed in the Schedule 1. And we have lots of limitations in studying or doing research on Schedule 1 animals. That's one particular thing. Second thing is that even though whale shark aggregate in our waters, unlike the Australia, especially the Western Australia and other region, we don't have anything like a resident population. In Western Australia, in Ningaloo Reef, they have a resident population. So, and every time when the divers go to that region, it can be citizen science, it can be general public, it can be whale shark researchers. Whenever they go to that region, whenever they sight the whale shark, you must be knowing something called the capture, mark, recapture. So they do all these kind of studies in that particular region. In India, first thing is that whale shark are coming to our coast only for a really small period of time, say like from October to April, and it's a really small window, and they are only aggregating in one particular region. And another thing is that it's a Schedule 1 animal, so we have our limitations to kind of just go and interact with that animal. And the previous one of the speaker, I think Mr. Vijay Bedi mentioned that in the Western country, people are more fascinated towards handling these animals. Okay, so but in India, we are not very much pro in handling the animals. We would like to kind of learn, understand, study everything from a distance. We really don't want to kind of disturb these particular animals. So that is also one of the reasons that we are not kind of coming up with quite a lot of research papers on this particular thing. But otherwise, we are also doing extremely good in the research, but their priority and our priorities are a little different, only that much.
Thank you, Sajjanji. Another, it's what you say is very true. Their priorities differ from ours, which was brought home by the fact that the vaccine for COVID needs a substance from the liver of sharks, and there are shark groups which have protested this. Do you think that it's going to impact wildlife? A vaccine, Indians are not really very vaccine driven, but the world is now and needs it pretty urgently. So how is it going to affect the shark population and other similar creatures?
I really don't think that it will really affect the shark population. See, like synthetically, almost all the things can be developed. So maybe in the initial phase, if they want to kind of extract few, chemicals or few, things from their liver, then later it can be synthetically made. So I really don't think that there will be a larger, extermination of sharks for this vaccine part. But apart from that, so leave the vaccine part apart. The sharks are globally commercially hunted. So the rate at which it is hunted, I really don't think even you will get sharks to kind of extract the vaccines out of it. So it's a sad part. So the commercial exploitation is so high. It's really high. So I really don't think the pharmaceutical industry is not going to make much of a damage to the shark population of the world.
Thank you so much. We'll just a short note to our attendees. We were supposed to have a talk by Dr. Yadavendra Dev Jhala, the lion expert. He's an authority, is probably one of the foremost authorities on the Gir lion. Unfortunately, because he had to be present at a wildlife scene, he sent his apologies for not being here. He shared a video with us, which we will upload onto our YouTube channel, and we'll also share a link on our website, Soft Power Mag. Since we are running out of time today, you can look at it at your convenience. It's an interview with Dr. Jhala, and talks about the Indian Gir lion. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and over to Akka.
Namaskar, and I must thank every person who has participated as a panelist over these 4 days. It was a great learning journey for us. Even though we've been conducting Srishti Sambarma for the past 10 years, anytime we meet people who work in the wild, it opens a new door, a new vision to the whole thing. I must say that people who work in the wild, more often than not, are doing it out of a very close connect that they feel with the wild. And that is how our culture was. And, repeating myself from the first session, I think we all need to understand when we say heritage, it does not end only with cultural heritage. Our heritage is our natural world also. So every person has an equal responsibility towards seeing that the space for animals and the welfare of the animals are taken care of. We do not belong to a culture that says that man is the crown of creation and that this world was created for man to use, abuse, disuse, or do whatever he wants. Every creature has equal right over the resources that are provided by Mother Nature or Bhumi Devi or whatever we want to call her as, or Earth Mother, or whatever we call her as. And so each time I interact with people who are interacting with the wildlife, more and more I realize that the people in urban areas have a much greater responsibility. And what I would like to request every one of our panelists who have taken part is to somehow bring this knowledge to our youngsters, because unless this thinking is inculcated right at the school level, I doubt it will come once they grow up. At least, have some sort of a, manual, or you have some sort of a small little module that you do with schools. And in fact, I was talking to Biswajit the other day, and I said, please see that, you bring this to the whole country. It's not just about the Northeast, but it's about every place. That, we make the urban dwellers start thinking about what they are doing, like what Gautam Pandey showed, that the mountain of garbage in Ladakh. Now in my own lifetime, I see from when I was a child to now, the amount of garbage has increased so much that I don't think there's going to be space for this garbage anymore. So we all need to rethink on our life, and we all need to understand that our heritage does not stop with just what is viewed as cultural heritage, but our whole natural heritage is very much a part of our nature, of us. And that is what we have to remember. So I think these 4 days have been a really fulfilling 4 days, because we have heard so many success stories, and it's not so, I mean, anybody, the moment they talk about environment, all you see is that, oh God, it's terrible, this is what's going to happen, we're going to lose everything kind of a story all the time. But we said that we have to celebrate her, and maybe in celebrating her, it brings a certain joy, and people will also start understanding about the joy that it gives. When Kalyan Verma spoke about, when he said that he was following an elephant for 6 months, and not every day, but over a period of 6 months. And he said that at one point he was sitting down and he was watching, and he was waiting to photograph a mother and an elephant and her calf. And he said that they were about 100 meters away, and half a kilometer away, suddenly people sighted the elephant, and then they started bursting crackers and making sounds. And the elephant started coming towards Kalyan, and he got a little concerned, because here he was sitting with all his camera equipment and he didn't know what to do. But she stretched her trunk out and pushed the baby elephant towards Kalyan, where the baby elephant was not even within 2 meters of her. And then she turned and went behind the crowd that had gathered about half a kilometer away. And when they ran away, she turned back and came here, took her calf, trumpeted as if saying thank you, and walked back and just continued with her grazing. He said, I had never shed tears. He said, it just brought tears to me, because here there was this wild elephant that was trusting its child with me. It was as if she was saying, okay, babysit my baby while I take care of these people. So that's the relationship that has been sort of inherent in our country for ages, but somewhere now we have lost it. So I hope we all get it back, listening to these beautiful stories from all these lovely people who have been doing so much work with the animal world. And we really look forward to engaging with you all again. And soon I'm looking at somehow bringing a module for schools, and I will certainly reach out to all of you. And I thank our viewers. Many of them have been here for all the 4 days through every session that we have conducted. And please do go to our website. Please visit all the exhibitions that we have put out there, because everything is a work of deep, intense connect to Mother Nature. Thank you all, and namaskar again.